And we should be live. Welcome, everyone. Here to answer your questions as usual. I took a day off from live streaming because this coming week I'm going to be doing a ton of live streaming related to the Django Bootcamp. So that starts on Monday at 10 a.m. Pacific Standard Time, or California time is probably easiest for some of you. I think it's GMT +8. But yeah, I'm here to answer your questions. Please let me know what questions you have and say hello. What's your name? Where are you from? All of those cool things. Yeah. Raju, hey, how's it going? Where are you from? Let me know. It's crazy. Have I shown you guys this? I don't know if it's got some spider webs on it. I need to hang it and actually clean it off or something. But it was pretty cool. I got it earlier this year for passing 100,000 subscribers. Probably the weirdest thing about it is that, like, it's just a plaque. It just shows that I sort of know what I'm doing, I guess. But you know, there's still a lot left to be done. A lot more to get after. And my question and answer thing is currently not working. So I might have to do this the old school way. But hey, thank you. Congrats for 1,000 subscribers. Thank you so much. Appreciate it. It's kind of weird. Like, it's like I had probably less than 100,000 for 5 or 6 years or so, and then it just started picking up a lot. And then all of a sudden, I hit 100,000 subscribers. You have to, like, actually enter, hey, you want the plaque thing, and then they sent it out to me, and it was like surreal, you know? Because you see, like, for me personally, I see a lot of other YouTubers that YouTube is their thing. That's like all they do. You know what I mean? So it's cool that I have that plaque now for eventually my wall, maybe somewhere back there, maybe somewhere else. I don't even know where to put it. Yeah, so I'm actually not going to be able to do my typical broadcast, so I'm just going to be on here for a little bit. I've been dabbling a lot with those question and answers, like the little chat boxes, and eventually I'll have those chat boxes back up here so we can have a little bit better of a conversation. But for some reason, it is not working right now, and I honestly do not know why. So yeah. Very curious. Okay, so let me go through some of these things manually then. Congratulations, thank you so much, appreciate it. You're from India. Wow, it's probably pretty late there at this point, right? So you are a late night person, I would imagine. I am too. Just with children, I have become a lot more of a morning person. You kind of have to be. But thank you for the congratulations. Zorro, thank you for 100,000 congratulations as well. It's really exciting. It's quite a few more than that at this point, which is really cool. I think this last year, a lot more people are watching YouTube. So, you know, it's pretty fun. And since I've been doing it YouTube for a while now, I think the progression has happened quite a bit. Eduardo, thank you. Taha, thank you so much. Abdul, hi, how's it going? Eduardo, Cuba, nice. How's it going in Cuba? My brother visited there a few years back, and he said absolutely loved it. Or whenever it opened, he went there. Whenever it opened to the United States. Mark, I'm doing well. How are you? It's a great weekend so far. Zorro, you want Django thumbnails? What do you mean by that? Not sure what you mean by Django thumbnails. Yeah. JP, yo, what's up? Tayyab, Saudi Arabia, thank you. Thank you for the congratulations, and hello from California. Praveen from India, welcome back, I believe. Mark, I have worked hard, that's true, but I think there's a lot of science to doing well on YouTube, things that I need to learn more about, right? I really think that, there's some videos that I know I could do, like the top 10 whatever. I don't know. I just really would prefer doing it the way I do it, even if it's a slow burn. And realistically, I'm not trying to just get a bunch of subscribers, right? I'm actually trying to help that person who I was at one point, right? So someone who's actively trying to get better at software, that is still learning a lot, because once you get to a point, you'll pass that learning, and then you won't necessarily need videos that much anymore. Maybe you will. I don't know. I'll try and keep up with the learning curve for a lot of people. Anyways, thank you, Mark. Appreciate it. Ashraf, how do you get your first Django freelance work? Yeah, I actually talk about this from time to time. I think it's really just going where people are hiring freelancers fairly often, right? So freelancer.com, I heard TopToll is pretty good for developers, but probably more experienced developers. Upwork, Fiverr, there's a lot of places as to where you can start getting freelance work. And I would say go to all of them and try your best to get jobs and maybe not charge too much out of the gates until you start getting a lot of popularity. Thanks for the question there. Harlem, New York. Hey, welcome. Thanks for coming out, John. My brother lives in Brooklyn. I lived in Brooklyn myself with him for a little while. It was New York at the time has so much energy and so many things going on that my personality didn't really fit with that. I do have a lot of things going on, but I'm not like go go go. I'm trying to just I'm from California. It's just a different pace of life, especially in New York. But welcome, John. Thanks for coming out. ICM, hi. How's it going? John, Django REST framework or Fast API? It really depends on what you're trying to do. So if you're doing a machine learning model, Fast API is fantastic for that, right? Django REST framework is a lot more full-featured. Django is more full-featured. Fast API, to get to where you want to be with the Django REST framework, it takes a lot of add-ons, where Django REST framework, it literally just takes Django. So it really depends what you're trying to build. To me, if you want authentication, I think authentication and user management, I think Django is better than Fast API or Flask, because it has a lot of security built into it as well. Not that Fast API or Flask can do it. Can't do it, rather. They definitely can do it. So thanks for asking. Suggestion for a Zoom clone without WebRTC. That's a good suggestion. Thank you. How to make Django dynamic form set. Oh yeah, so you need to make a form set factory, one, right? I'm assuming you probably know how to do that. With that, you can actually have an empty form that you can duplicate with JavaScript. And if I remember correctly, you just have to change the blank forms. Shoot, what was it? I think it's the actual names of the form. The input names. I believe that's what you have to change. Thanks for the question. I haven't done it in a little while, but I actually have a tutorial on it called, I think, Django Forms and Form Sets Unleashed on my website, so cfe.sh. So check that out when you get the opportunity. You know what? I'm going to try something here. See if maybe I can pull up this broadcast on my little box thing. Yes! Haha! Success! Okay, cool. So I can come back to doing these. For some reason, my back-end part's not working correctly right now. But there's a lot of things that now I can do my standard Q&A stuff. Because I'm like super excited about this thing working. I have a number of things that I really want to talk about, but not until I actually finish this whole project. Okay, so here we go. How do you know how to build an online dictionary using Django? or excuse me, I read that completely wrong. Do I know how to build one? Yes. So an online dictionary, I'm assuming you mean like a dictionary for words and their definition, like an English dictionary, for example. This actually would be pretty easy to do in Django. So you create a Django model, you create a field with the actual keyword itself, and then you create another field with the actual definition. It's really that simple. Then you use views to display them and maybe some forms to actually add them. But as far as automatically create an online dictionary, there's probably a way to do it with some sort of third-party REST API that gives you the key value pairs or the actual keyword and their definition. But that's actually pretty straightforward. Thanks for the question. Here's one, JP. I want to use the Django REST framework as my backend for a Flutter app. Do I have a video of how to do or use API authentication? Yes, I definitely do. So the course that I have on my website called REST API, it's a massive course that shows you how to do authentication with the Django REST framework because it's absolutely critical. The front end itself doesn't matter nearly as much. So you can use Flutter, you can use React Native, you can use React, Vue, Ionic, iOS, Swift, or Java. There's a lot of things that you can do there. So thanks for the question, JP. Next one, can you share about your journey about starting as a developer? I'm a bootcamp grad looking for direction right now. You're in Dallas. Well, Mohammed, I am a big fan of Texas. I went to Dallas last year, and that was my first experience. Sorry, I'm derailing this question a little bit, but that was my first experience on one of those Lime electric scooters, and wow, that is cool. That is so much fun. So my journey about starting as a developer. Yeah, so I started actually designing websites when I was like 15 or 16 because I had a clothing company I was trying to start. So in California, it's very, very popular, especially in Southern California, to start a clothing company. It's because like Billabong's from here. I believe Quicksilver started here. Or maybe Billabong's not from here. Maybe it's Quicksilver. I don't remember these details, but a lot of clothing companies start in Southern California that end up becoming really big because of the surfer culture and all these things. So what happened for me is I'm like, oh, I want to build my website for this because the founder of the Hundreds, he goes by Bobby Hundreds, he told me that I should just go learn on my own. I should go buy a book and go learn. So I did. I was like 15 or 16 years old at this point. And I learned how to build a website, but this was just HTML and CSS. So I didn't actually know the backend to develop it, the actual programming side of things. So fast forward to college, I took these skills to launch other projects using WordPress, still not really knowing the backend. I still only knew how to make the design okay. It wasn't great. But then towards the end of college, I knew that I wanted to work on the internet. This was a little over 10 years ago now. I knew I wanted to work on the internet in some form or fashion. I just didn't know how to do it. But I did know how to test ideas pretty quickly. I knew how to make MVP landing pages. So I created several MVP landing pages, but one of them in particular really stuck, and it helped me land a partnership with a friend of mine who is a developer. We weren't friends yet, but we became friends over the time, and he actually helped build this backend for me. Long story short, he had to leave because he needed visa sponsorship here in the US. He had to get a job that actually could give him visa sponsorship. So he left the business. I'm definitely cutting things through a lot. But he recommended somebody to me because I'm like, I really still believe in this idea. I'm going to learn how to build the backend myself. I'm going to learn how to do all of the software programming myself. I tried a bunch of things, but he gave me a recommendation from one of his friends to try out Django. I learned a little bit about Django and I was just pumped, right? I learned enough to actually recreate that same backend in a lot less time than I ever thought that I ever could before. And so for me, the journey of becoming a developer was so much about what is it that I really wanted, right? I went back down to that why. For me, so much of it was like I really, really wanted to work on the internet. I really wanted to be able to work anywhere in the world at any time, and really have a schedule of my own. So the entrepreneurial part was the schedule of my own. The working anywhere part was the software development side. And that's even more true now than it's ever been because of COVID, right? People pretty much work remotely exponentially more now than they ever have. So I think you really need to get this underlying foundation of why is it do you want to be a developer? So boot camps are great because you can go through things really fast. But if you don't have that underlying foundation of why you actually want to know this stuff in your bones, it's going to be really hard to continue forward, in my opinion. Now, for some people, it's like, hey, you were doing, I used to wait tables at restaurants and stuff. So I was waiting tables. That was another motivating factor. I don't want to wait tables anymore. I want to actually go do and own my own thing. I just use software to get there. So if it's literally, I'm going to learn how to do software so I don't have to do whatever job you're currently doing, that I think is often motivation too. So yeah, thanks for the question. Appreciate it. Let's see here. Hello from Nigeria. Big fan base here in Nigeria. Thank you for saying that. I wonder how that's measured. Because I've seen this same thing commented on a few of my other friends' YouTube channels. I would say that it's flattering for sure. So at the very least, you are very flattering. I appreciate that. You have a coding group with coding entrepreneurs. Wow. Okay, so that's pretty cool. Why don't you guys invite me to it? Send me a link. Shoot it to my Twitter. My Twitter is that top one there. So shoot me that link. But thank you. Appreciate the support there. Let's see here. Next one. Best practice for a single page application, Django Vue or React.js. There's a lot of things that I could talk about here. The number one thing as far as the Django is concerned is having refining your queries with Django. To do this, as in making more efficient lookups in your database, to do this with Django, you use the Django debug toolbar. That will show you what kind of queries you're doing, and it'll also start to beg the question, how do I do more efficient queries? That's one of the best things I can recommend at this point. Thanks for the question. Let's see here. Still working out the bugs over here. Thank you, thank you. Taha. Next question. Django fast enough to work and process on PDF files? Yes, but you would probably want to do it in a worker process, not in the main Django process or the request response cycle process. To do that, you use something like Celery, Python Celery, and Django, and probably a data store like Redis or RabbitMQ. But Django can absolutely do and process these PDF files. I mean, the question is probably more, is Python fast enough to work and process PDF files? That answer is yes too. Can it be faster? Probably, but turning it into a worker process means that the user can request a PDF and go and do something else while the worker process actually finishes that PDF. Once it's finished, the user can be notified somehow that the PDF is done. So hopefully that answers your question there. So just a reminder, since I got more of you guys here, I'm going to be hosting a Django bootcamp starting Monday. I already did a somewhat info session with a few hiccups, but a somewhat info session earlier this week. So check out that if you're interested in it. It's 100% going to be streamed right here on YouTube starting at 10 a.m. California time or Pacific Standard Time. I think it's GMT plus 8. I should know that, but yeah. Anyways, hope to see you guys out there. And YouTube controversy sells examples, Node.js versus Python. Those views get a lot of, yeah, those videos definitely get a lot of views. Absolutely. So like, how do I build more views? See, this is the thing is I know that there's ways to spam YouTube essentially without really being spam, but basically make these fluff videos that are just very clickable. Perhaps they're decent in content, perhaps not. But those videos get like some people watch it for like a minute, you know. Sure, maybe it has 300,000 views, but if it's only being watched for a minute, 10 seconds, to me that's not it's not really where I want to go with things. What I want to do is actually help people progress. Although doing an example of Node.js versus Python, I think can be incredibly valuable. But if you are just trying to clickbait people into clicking and watching for 10 seconds, that's not really how I want to do things. I've really tried my best to avoid that clickbaity type stuff. But thanks for the suggestion. Appreciate it. Next one. Would you consider diving into Kiwi? True pronunciation, by the way. Furkan? Is that, or Gunny? I'm not sure what you meant by true pronunciation. I actually am not a huge fan of building GUIs or graphical user interfaces with Python. And I think Kiwi fits into that. The reason being is actually making responsive applications with Python is not great. So CSS is much better at it, and it has a lot more documentation, right? I would love to actually make animated videos, like actual videos that you can watch, like here, with CSS. Maybe at some point I will be able to do that. Maybe you might need a little JavaScript as well. Explaining things or doing intro titles and stuff like that. But Python, I haven't seen a lot of examples of Python GUIs that are just knocking it out of the park. So I've really put Kiwi on the back burner. Every time I've tried Kiwi, I just get frustrated and wish it was CSS and JavaScript. I'm sure other people don't feel that way, but I'm like, I've come a lot more from the web design stuff. So if you listen to me talk earlier, that's what I said. Anyways, thanks for the question. Can you really understand Django in depth? Some people say that Flask, in case of learning curve or something like that, has a better understanding. Well, Flask and Fast API are incredibly easy to create a web page using Python with, or to render out HTML using Python, because it's a single function. Every URL can be one single function, and that's like mind-bogglingly easy if you know how to do Python. And all it's really doing is rendering an HTML page of some kind with the context that you give it, or it's rendering out JSON data or something like that. So it's really easy to get started with Flask, Fast API, AIO, HTTP, and a number of other Python ones, where the real value comes in Django is the fact that it has a lot of pieces built into it. Right, so one of the reasons that a lot of people use WordPress right now is because you can just click install and you get all these things that you need for a blog application. Django's not quite that far to doing blogs, but it is quite that far if you really want to quickly build a fully functioning web application right out of the gates. Right, so like Flask is a web application, but it doesn't have, by default, doesn't have bindings to a database. Right, so you actually have to install something in order for the database to start working in your Flask application. Django has it in there by default. User authentication is another thing. Same. Django has it in there by default. Flask, you need to add it in. So if you want to actually compare Flask and Django, you need to add a ton of things into your Flask application that start to make it a little bit more complicated and doesn't really tend to have its own opinion, right? So Django itself says, this is the best way to do this, this, and this, and you can follow that best practice. Their documentation is their best practice, you know what I mean? Let's see. Can I fix my audio noise? What audio noise are you referring to? What audio noise do you hear that you are mentioning? And does other people see or hear this? I don't know. Yeah, so again, the 30-day Python course has that noise too. It might be related to how the mic is and how it's set up and the fact that I have circulating air in my studio. Otherwise, I would go bonkers. Perhaps that's why. Sorry about that. I've tried to eliminate it as much as possible. But I only hear that every once in a while, and I don't hear it nearly as well as you do. But yeah. Like I legitimately, it'd be amazing to have like a full real production studio. It's just I to afford to do that would be pretty expensive, I think. So maybe eventually I will have one, and then my audio will be absolutely crisp, like as if I was singing a studio song. But maybe that's going to happen at some point. Anyways, how to better do UI UX of apps. Come from any, let's say you compare music apps to Spotify or Geo7. I'm not sure what that is. The only differentiator is UI and UX of Spotify. So how to do better UI of an application. This is not a simple answer. But I will say one of the ways you can improve it is by monitoring user behavior, right? So there are ways to track what their mouse does on any given site. And if their mouse is bouncing back and forth a lot, it's likely that the user interface is not great. So you would want to just remove components and pieces around and optimize for that. And then you do that little by little to improve it. If you're talking about the design, like the cleanness of the design and how it looks, I mean, there's a lot of design theory out there, things that I don't really know that much about myself. But as far as like actually improving how the user interface works for the user experience or the UX, a lot of it is just tracking and watching what your actual users are doing and seeing where they get stuck or confused or leave pages, stuff like that. You know what I mean? Inspiring. Thank you. Appreciate it. Thank you. Thank you. Let's see here. How can we use Django thumbnails to speed up the render process? We have the original image, but we want to render a smaller version of that image in the homepage, so the homepage will be a lot faster. I cover this somewhere. I don't remember where I cover it. I think it might be in Dive into AWS. But you can use Pillow or the Python image library to when you actually upload an image to Django, you can have like an original image field and then a thumbnail field, and then maybe a worker process that you run using Python and Celery, where you upload the image to the original part, the worker process gets triggered, then it actually uses Pillow to then save it into the thumbnail version. I think that's a really easy way to do it. Yes, thank you for the question. Next up, Django for enterprise applications. Yes, you absolutely can use Django for enterprise applications, especially if you mean like installing it on their servers and stuff like that. You can do that. You might need to use something like PY installer to install it on their servers specifically. That might be the easiest way to actually distribute it without giving away all of the source code. So check that out. I built my own dictionary using web scraping. Is that safe? Yeah, I mean, as long as the data is cleaned through your web scraping process, then it should be safe. And if you can safely store it in a database, is what I mean, then yeah, you should be good to go. Of course, I don't know exactly what data you're using, but yeah. Mohammed, thank you for that comment. Appreciate it. I'm glad it was inspiring. Next one. I was learning from a Django tutorial, but only after your YouTube content it clicked. Oh, great. That's great to hear. One of the things that I've definitely experienced a lot over these last 7-8 years teaching Django is where people go, huh? I don't do it all the time, and I don't do great all the time, but where people just get a little stuck. And I think as a developer, I do this all the time myself, is like I often forget what I don't remember or what I was having a hard time with early on. So I tend to just give way too much context. And then that way, hopefully it clicks a lot more with people. But I'm glad that Casper? Yeah, I'm glad that I helped you out. Let's see here. What do you think about React combined with Next.js? Well, I haven't used Next.js yet, so I don't know. So, not a great answer, but that's the one I got. Hello there, can you take me a place where I can learn Django REST Framework? I think I just mentioned it, but on my website, under courses, there's a REST API course in there. It teaches you what a REST API is, and then teaches you what the Django REST framework is. So that's how you can do it. Content always wins in the long run. Yeah, Mark, I tend to believe that. I think there's been a number of people that have shown this. One of my favorite examples, or I have a couple favorite examples. Casey Neistat. So Casey Neistat, if you look at his videos from like 2009 or 10 or early in YouTube days, right, you'll see that his style is very similar to today. And he just refined it, honed it, and he really makes entertaining stories. I mean, that's what he's always been about, is trying to make these entertaining stories. And his content now, it almost doesn't matter what it is. It's probably going to get at least a couple 100,000 views of him just pretty much vlogging and just living his life, but just with a video camera and talking to it. I think that's really, really cool. And I would imagine maybe some of these Q&As at some point, when I get enough questions, maybe I can start redoing them and making it a little bit more entertaining than me just answering live questions, but rather just grabbing a question that gets asked a lot and turn it into hopefully an interesting video. But thanks, Mark. Appreciate it. When is my day one of the Django Bootcamp? That's Monday. So 10 a.m. Pacific Standard Time. So California time. That's when it is. Thanks for the question. Let's see. What is the best way to build progressive web apps with Python? That's a really good question, because I think JavaScript is the one that primarily drives progressive web apps. But there is a way to compile Python into JavaScript. I'm trying to remember what the name of it is. But honestly, if you're doing that, you might as well just use JavaScript. So if I do find one, I'll try and tweet it or something. So I haven't really had a need to do this. But yeah, I will try and tweet it if I do find something. Thanks for the question, Mark. And 1 second. Can I talk about Django 3? Yeah, so Django 3 is the first version of Django, I think, with asynchronous view capability. And this means that the views themselves can be asynchronous, but the ORM, as in the way Django works with the database, is not asynchronous. It will be at some point, but it's not yet. So this means that you can do all sorts of asynchronous Python things, like Python 3.5 and above has, inside of a Django view itself. So typically, when things happen and take a while inside of any given Django view, you can often offload it to something like Celery or Redis to make it async-like. But what Django 3 does in the views is it actually puts it in the view itself, so you can actually do asynchronous views. And then there are some methods to turn asynchronous calls into synchronous calls, so you can actually work with the Django database. And if you're really curious about how to do this, my Django Channels 2 video, which is on my website as well as on YouTube, actually shows you how to do this in a different package called Django Channels, but it's still roughly the same thing. It's just not using WebSockets, it's using views. So thank you for that question. Yeah, I definitely have some little bugs I need to work out on these messages. Any tutorials on how to implement SEO for Django? That's a good question, because my friend Dennis Ivey, or Dennis Ivanoff, on his channel, Dennis Ivey, actually talks about this. I think he just released it. Pretty sure he did. Like literally today. It's funny you ask. How to be a good engineer, back-end engineer, to get a job as a fresher. This must be an Indian term, fresher. Tell me if it is, because I don't hear it very often. I hear it more as like a beginner or a newbie. It's probably equivalent to newbie. So how to get a job in general. Well, first off, you need to look at what job requirements are for maybe a couple companies, maybe like 10 companies that you would want to work at. right? See what those job requirements are, get a sense of the actual skill sets that they're trying to look for. Now, unfortunately, job listings won't ever really give you accurate information. I recently saw a job, I see this actually fairly often, and it also tweeted about fairly often too, is job listings for somebody with like 8 years of experience with Kubernetes. Kubernetes came out like, I think in 2017. So it's physically not possible to have that many years of experience unless you're one of the early Kubernetes developers, and maybe you started 8 years ago, right? So these listings aren't always inaccurate. But what I would imagine that you could do is you could start a blog on medium.com and start interviewing managers that are interviewing people for these engineer jobs, and ask them this same question among many others, and see if they'd want to be featured on your blog. This also would be really good if you have a bunch of managers that are looking for specific job hiring at that point. That will give you a lot more clarification of this, while also introducing yourself to a lot of these hiring managers, because you want to display that you're going to do things to stand out, as in to be outstanding. You have to stand out. So that's a way to do it, right? Because it's rare. I would say it's rare that a entry-level position is going to be needing the high level, like to actually deeply understand everything about the role that they're trying to hire for or trying to get a job for. You will want to know some basics. You will want to not look silly, but what you're also going to want to do is actually be kind of different than everybody else and actually do things that nobody else does. And I think actually interviewing a lot of these managers and stuff like that would be a way to get in there, and then also give yourself a really good answer for this. And then you can write a really long blog post or a book or something like that on how to answer this question yourself. Thanks for that. Hopefully that's not just, hey, go do some more work and I don't give you an answer type of answer. Hello from Indonesia. Hello from California. Welcome. Do I need to learn data structures to become the best web developer? No, you do not need to learn the complexities of data structures to be a web developer. To be the best one, well, I don't even know what the best one means. Like, best in what sense, right? How fast you can actually build a web application. If that's the question, well, then no, you probably won't need to learn it in depth to actually build a web application, because knowing data structures is important, but it's not super important to actually build a web application. You just need to know how to build a web application. But if you want to be the best, like database, let's say a database manager for a web application, then you probably will want to know data structures really, really well. Thanks for the question. Next one. During the bootcamp, can you please explain how Django projects are structured in production environment? How about databases, storage, and security are implemented? Thank you for the suggestion. We will see if that starts to be something that we really need to do. The Django bootcamp, really the actual lessons themselves, is probably going to be maybe about 6-7 hours of lessons themselves. And if you look at some of my other content that doesn't necessarily go into the questions you're asking, doesn't always get to all of these things. So hopefully it will, but I can't guarantee it won't. It will, but thanks for the suggestion. What is the best front end to work with Django? The one you know well. And if you don't know one, I think React.js is a good choice. Honestly, jQuery still works really well, but it's not as good as React.js, and it's not as good as Vue.js in its current form. So I would say pick one, get good at it, and go for it. I don't think Django, the front end itself, you can use Django templates for rendering out the front end too. So you don't actually need a front end framework to make it happen. And many will say just pure JavaScript is better than actually using a front end framework. But yeah, thanks for the question. When to use async Django views versus Celery? So this is a good question. It's really going to depend on exactly what it is that you're trying to accomplish with any given view, and how long it needs to run for, or how robust the system needs to be. Because your Django worker process doesn't have to be as robust, or it could be a lot more robust than what is on your web application server, right? So your web application server and your Django worker server, they don't need to live in the same place. They probably can have access to the same database, but they can definitely live in different worlds, if you will. And it really depends on how powerful you need that Celery worker to work. Now, you can actually use asynchronous Django views with Celery, so it's not always an either or question. But asynchronous views often make things more complicated, in my opinion, than using Celery, because Celery, you can just wrap a decorator around a function and hit .delay on that function when you need to call it, and that turns it into a worker process. So you can do that anywhere in your application, versus asynchronous Django views only work in a view response cycle. They don't work everywhere. So a good example of this is if you need to add some sort of signal after you save an entry in a database or save a model rather, you can use the post save signal. In that post save signal, you can send that to Celery. That's often used as well. So yeah, that's a good way to think about it too, I think. Thanks for the question. How important is it to do online problem solving? Code Forces, HackerRank. I'm currently learning HTML, CSS, and Django to be a full stack dev. Well, I actually haven't used any of those ever. I've heard some good things, but I don't know if they are really good indications of how well you can build a project from scratch. So I would rather recommend, you can always try those things out and see how you like them and see if they actually are testing your skills in a new way. Like, you'll know that, I think, pretty quickly if it's actually a stimulating challenge. A more stimulating challenge, at least for me, would be not playing some sort of game to see how well I know code, but rather to actually build real projects and get them out there, whether they're just on open source or you actually deploy them to where real users can learn them, or use them rather. So that is actually what I'd recommend. That's probably more important than testing how quickly you can solve any given problem. Because also, some problems might take you a while to solve them, but the longer you're thinking about a problem, perhaps you think of 10 solutions that might solve that problem, versus when you're being timed and there's like a crunch to solve the problem, you might only find one solution, but maybe your 10th solution is 100 times better than your first solution, and I think you really get the latter, the long-term thinking about these problems, when you actually build full-on projects. Thanks for the question. Cool, JP. Check it out. That sounds good. Let's see here. I'm not sure what MSW logo means, but thanks. Code Party, you got it. You're welcome. Please give it an overall about Django database backing up and restore. Is there another way to do it other than Django features? Yes, you can dump databases, which is another way of saying you export a database directly from the database and back it up there. That's way more efficient than doing fixtures. So Postgres and MySQL, you can dump those databases into a single file and then reload them into a clean database, and that will restore everything for you there. It's quite literally backing up the database. It has nothing to do with Django, other than the fact it is a Django managed database. And then there's actually a way to go from a database into Django models. I'm trying to remember what the actual command is, but I think it's inspect_db, or no, it's not inspect_db. Geez, what is I don't remember what it is. But there's a way to actually look up in your Django model look up in your database and turn that into a Django model itself. So if for some reason you back up a database and don't remember the structure that the model should be in, that's another way to do that as well. So if you lose your code or something, at least for the models, not everything else. How and where to deploy a Django project? There is a lot of places to do this. I think Heroku is a very common one because it's incredibly easy. I know a lot of people use something like Python Anywhere. How I cover this on my channel quite a bit too. as well as my website. So my website definitely has everything, almost everything related to Django that you can think of. I would say that. Maybe not the cutting edge, newest and latest and greatest things, but pretty much everything else, which is pretty much everything. When will you see me with free code camp? Already been there. Already done it. My one of my Django series is on there, and I think it's like one of their top 20 maybe watched videos. Thanks for the question though, or suggestion rather. Can you give me some examples for Django portfolio projects? Geez. No, not that I can really think of off the top of my head. You make an e-commerce application, you make a social application, you make a blog post application, you make a machine learning application, machine ingesting application, you make web scraping application that stores it and through Django. You make an image processing service, you make a video processing service. There's a lot. It's literally like a blank canvas. You can almost make anything that you want with a web application. It's not Django specific either. Maybe that's a good question. Maybe not. I don't know. Best hosting provider for a Django application. So one of the major cloud hosts is probably the best. But saying best is certainly relative, right? So the easiest to deploy on, that is also very stable and really not that challenging to do, in my opinion, is Heroku. That's incredibly easy. To get a little bit more challenging, something like AWS, Google Cloud, Azure even, all of those are maybe a little bit more challenging to get in production, but you could totally use those as well. I've used DigitalOcean, Linode. I've done a bunch of things in how to actually host your Django project. So this is a really hard question to answer because what defines best, you know? Thank you, Zoro. I'm glad you learned a lot. Thanks for watching my stuff. Appreciate it. Yes. So I'm probably going to be jumping off here soon. If there's any last minute questions, the easiest way to get your question answered pretty much always when I do these live chats is one of those super chat things. Even if it's $1 or a few rupees, it just goes to the top of the queue and I answer it right away. It helps support me do these things. Obviously, you showing up and asking questions is the primary support, but that's another way. Anyways, thanks for the question. Are your course updated on your website? Because on Udemy, they are not. When you say updated, I'm assuming you mean updated to the latest version of any given software. In many cases, they are updated to the latest version, but maybe not the ones that you're looking at. So like, for example, the e-commerce course, that one is still in Django 1.11, right? So you're like, well, how come 1.11? Well, the vast majority of things about Django haven't changed that much over the years. Django 3 brought in asynchronous views, but if you're a beginner and you're still learning, you're not going to be using asynchronous views most likely. But yeah, my website literally has everything. And if you go on into the projects, you'll see all of the newest stuff on there. And it kind of goes in order. What's newest is definitely the most up to date. So thanks for the question. Even if that's not fully satisfying. Python versus Java. Well, I don't really know Java, so I'm going to have to give Python this one. But, you know, a lot of people love Java. So, yes. Let's see. Oh, this is an old one. Which package is good for Django to convert HTML to PDF? Geez, I'm trying to remember what I did, but I definitely have a video on covering this specifically. Do I play games? Video games? Not really. I used to play Call of Duty a lot. I do not so much anymore because I have 2 little kids I'd rather play with. So I play games with them all the time. Does that count? I think it does. Let's see here. Thank you so much for the tweet me tutorial. Thank you for watching it. Appreciate it. And the comment. Do I need to be good with algorithms to be a web developer? Well, you need to know what an algorithm is, and algorithms can be incredibly simple. So yes, I guess. They don't always think of algorithm as a recipe, right? Like, do you know the basic recipes? Yes or no? You are late. Professional face puncher. Thanks for coming out. Good to see you again. Node versus Django JS. I figured out a good analogy for this. This is like comparing a plot of dirt versus a farm, right? So Django's the farm. It's already almost ready to go. You just need to come in there and run it almost, basically, practically. A plot of dirt is Node.js. There's so much potential there, but it's not fully built out yet. It's not ready yet. Node.js is a runtime. Python is a runtime. Python runs Django. Node.js runs Express.js. So I've answered this a lot. I need to make a video on it so I can just say, hey, go watch that video. It's important to learn React as a Django developer. No, but it is important to learn how to build something in Django that can work with a client like React, like Vue. So you might want to know a little bit about React if you're going to be solely a Django developer. But more specifically, you'll probably want to know about JavaScript in general, vanilla JavaScript, before you learn something like React, Vue, or jQuery, or Angular. Yeah. Javine, hello. Okay. Should I learn Python? Yes. Yes, you should. You ask someone who really enjoys learning Python and doing Python, all that stuff. Yes. The answer is yes. Have I seen Mentalist? I asked. You said you're in California and you just completed the series. I have not. Is it good? Is that James Spader? I can't remember. I don't remember if that's James Spader. No, but if you watch the Californians on YouTube, the sketch from SNL, they surprisingly get it pretty accurate. I mean, it's a little over the top, but it is it's pretty funny for those of us that live here. Like, we call our highways our freeways. We give it the number. There's a number for it, and we call it that number. So, like, you take the 405, not take 405 or take highway 405 or freeway 405. Literally say the 405. And yeah, it's chill. We'll be there in 10 minutes. Another thing that's really funny that Californians do that the Californians on SNL really points this out is when somebody asks you how far something is, like, hey, how far is the beach from you? You don't give distance, you give time. So you'll say it's like 10 or 15 minutes away. It's kind of funny. That's definitely how it's said. I mean, it's because it's such a driving culture here. That's how we talk about distance. Anyways. What do I mean by asynchronous in Django 3? Please let me know in layman's words. So this question is actually, what is asynchronous coding versus synchronous coding? The best way I can think about this is, imagine you're playing a game of chess, or rather, imagine you're playing 10 games of chess, and synchronous coding is you play one whole game and then you move to the next game, and you play one whole game, you move to the next one. So you play game one after game, or you play game one, then game two, and then game three, and so on until you're all done with all 10 games, one after another, sequentially. Asynchronous coding is you're playing all 10 games almost at once, but you're actually just switching back and forth between them, so it's happening concurrently. At least that's how asynchronous works in Python and Django. Hopefully that helps. It's definitely a lot more complicated than regular synchronous coding, in my opinion. Cool. Well, I don't know if we're going to get any super chats today. That is okay. I probably shouldn't care that much about it, like even bring it up for that matter, but it does answer your question a lot faster. Clippy. So Fresher is very Indian. Yeah, I figured as much. I wonder if there's other terms that I should be looking out for. Oh, it's a new grad. Okay, so specifically a new grad. So the other question is, do you call like new students into university like the first year students, do you call them freshmen or do you call them something else? Because that's what we call them. We call the new students freshmen. And then graduates, recent graduates, that's what we call them. We call them recent graduates or new graduates, like you said. But thanks for that. Appreciate it. Django versus React, what is your choice? So this is like saying, do you want the dining room or the kitchen, right? Which one do you prefer? They work together. They can work together hand in hand. And there's probably ways to like actually compare the two. But Django can be React's backend. React can be Django's front end, but they don't actually need each other to do what they do well. So yeah. I tried going through the Django REST framework documentation, but it was like you were not able to decipher the content. Yeah, it's challenge. I mean, if you're not familiar with actually reading through documentation, it makes it a lot harder to try and read through documentation because all the information's there. It's just not distilled. And so that's where a lot of these courses that I do and many other people do help distill that as much as possible, hopefully. That's also why I'm here, is to answer those questions and continue to help you distill it as well. Let's see here. Oh, really? I made you start programming. What got you into it? I actually talked about this at the very beginning of this live stream. So if you want to back up and watch that. But the gist of it was I had a project I really, really wanted built. And so I learned how to program to build that project so I could work online and work anywhere in the world, which is what I do. Funny thing, though, is I still live in Southern California. This is where I'm from, and this is where I went to college. So, but I have lived other places, which is really cool. Really fun. Django Model Forms or Forms API, which one is best? Forms API, what are you referring to there? Is that a package called Forms API? Django Model Forms are super easy. So maybe those, but I haven't used the Form API. If it is a package, but that's like so generic right there. Forms API could be pretty much anything. So, yeah. Aaron, thank you. Thank you so much. Appreciate it. So one thing I will say, guys, if I'm not mentioning your name, it's usually because I'm just trying to get to your answer so I can get everyone else. That's typically the thing. The other one is if I don't know how to pronounce it, I don't want to be disrespectful, so I'd rather just answer your questions. I don't know if that needs to be said, but I say it a lot. Haha! Sai? Is that how I say it? Thank you, Sai. Appreciate it. Every little bit helps. Every little bit. Already answered this one. Let's see here. And already answered this one. Go back a little bit. And yes, Aaron, you should learn Python. Did I answer that already too? Yeah, it sounds like you're just wanting to ask the same question over and over again, huh, Aaron? That's okay. How can you bulk create users from Excel? Yes, this is actually not that hard to do unless you've never done it before. Okay, which is what I'm assuming is happening here. So to load data in from Excel, I think the easiest way to do that is with Python Pandas. It does add some bulk to your Django project, but it adds a lot of features because Django Pandas reads Excel files really cleanly, better than most things, especially if it's a really big Excel file. So you can use Pandas to read in the data, and then you want to use, so once you read it into a data frame, which is what you'll do to read it in, then you'll want to use toDict or toDictionary. That creates a list of all these items. Then you'll iterate through that list of items and put each iteration into an instance of the model class you're going for. So literally just the class name, parentheses, and then all your arguments. No save, no objects, no create, none of that stuff. Just the model name, parentheses, and then the arguments for that model that relate to each row in that data frame from your Excel spreadsheet. And then as you iterate, you're also not only creating an instance of that model object class without saving it, that instance you add to another list. That list is what you use to do bulk create on. So the model itself, .objects, .bulk create, the list of Python objects or instances of the model class that aren't actually saved in the database yet. That is how you do bulk create from Excel. It's too bad I don't have that like already queued up, because that would have been a good little lesson to show you. But yeah. Oh, nice. We got another one. Thank you for the super chat. Appreciate it. Best way to start machine learning for a Django developer. I'm a professional face puncher. Hey, you have another YouTube channel or YouTube account? I guess I do too. I have a lot actually, because every Gmail account basically has one. So you want to build something like a CNN or natural language tool. So NLTK is not, it's a library. CNNs or convolutional neural networks is a type of neural network. So the best way to start learning machine learning for Django development, Fast AI is a really easy way to do it. I have a couple series as well on my website. So Tricaros is one of them that I have on my website that you could use. But the Django part of this is not nearly as important as the machine learning part. So you kind of want to separate those two things out in your mind, because Django is really just going to be calling your model at some point. Although you may have heard me mention that you should probably use something other than Django to actually serve the model, which we can talk about some other time. But to actually get into machine learning, just using a high-level machine learning framework, Fast AI is a really easy way to do that, because you get data, you just call one single function to train your model, and then you can actually use that training model from there. So Jeremy Howard is the instructor. He has a YouTube channel. I actually am holding his book right here. This book's really good. It's also free on GitHub. So if you look for Deep Learning for Coders with Fast AI, that's a really easy way to get started. And then using something like Google Colab, it's free to use Google Colab and their GPUs, which is really important for machine learning. Thanks for the question and the super chat. Is it okay to build a SaaS using Django as a backend? Absolutely. That is software as a service. You totally can, and you totally should. Sorry for the delay on that question, but thank you for it. I am now a good 30 minutes behind here. And that's probably going to do it, guys. So thanks for the questions. Sorry I didn't get to everyone. Got one more that I just wanted to mention right here. Thank you for the super chat. And call DT. Call you DT, I'm assuming. Thank you, DT. Appreciate it. But anyways, guys, thanks so much for tuning in to this live chat. I have a bunch of things that I'm working on to make these live chats more interactive and a lot more rewatchable. So hopefully that will be done soon. But there's a number of glitches with it, because those glitches come up once I actually go live. It's a lot harder to test it when I'm not live. But yeah, thanks so much, guys. And hope to see you in the next live chat. And if I don't, be sure to check out the Django bootcamp that I'm going to be starting on Monday at 10 a.m. Pacific Standard Time or California time.